recall in the last video how we went through a quick demo of this final product, this dynamic form that we've been building with Corticon.js, kind of the finished product here. One thing I didn't do in that previous video was talk about the way in which this test driver template that we provide from the Corticon GitHub repository can be used to trace the behavior of the input and output from the decision service over the course of a form that we create. This bolsters that testing capability that we saw within those rule tests to now be able to see precisely how the end user of a dynamic form would experience the form at each stage of being presented with different fields and ultimately capturing the data that they enter. So when I hit this show trace button, we'll see these three different panes within this bottom section. First one, all relatively self-explanatory. First one is input to decision service call. This will be the payload, similar to what we saw on the left-hand side of a rule test or in the base HTML page showing how to invoke a decision service that we created in the previous video. And the second pane there is the results of the decision service. Again, similar to those previous examples, but what we'll see here is which aspects of the output payload are being read from by this client-side UI that we're interacting with in order to produce the inputs that are being presented to the user. And you recall that when we were using Corticon to build the rules for this policy, we were building with a rule vocabulary, and that rule vocabulary ultimately represented an abstraction of the JSON data that came in at runtime when we ultimately created the decision based upon the input data. So similarly, in a data model function, in a data model notion using JSON here, we'll be defining how this front end should be capturing and accruing the values that the end user enters in from one stage to another. This is going to be using the browser data versus any data store with Corticon. Corticon is, again, just a single JavaScript function at the end of the day when we generate it into a decision service. It's not a database. It doesn't store any data. It means it's very flexible, but it means we also have to be creative in the way that we leverage the available ways to store this data temporarily in the browser as a means to continually feed in the accrued data at subsequent steps over the course of the stages of the form.